We already have 26 people waiting online. The number is growing gradually.
Would you prefer to wait a few moments just to allow people to come in?
Yeah, normally we start at the time that the TIC people suggest.
Okay, perfect. Okay.
Bien, we're being informed that we are already live transmitting. Amigos, buenas noches. Aquí estamos transmitiendo desde las plataformas de UNIBE en línea a través de nuestra cuenta de YouTube y de Facebook. Nos hace mucho honor recibir en esta noche a los doctores David Heason y Paul Hampton de la Universidad Wolverhampton University. Ellos nos acompañan para hablarnos sobre los nuevos desarrollos de las tecnologías BIM o BIM y cuál es el futuro de estas plataformas de trabajo. Nos acompaña también como coanfitriona la arquitecta Khaleesi Bachá, orgullosamente colega, profesora de la Universidad Iberoamericana, egresada de Wolverhampton en la especialidad de BIM Construction, ¿verdad? Así se llama Khaleesi. Pues el tema es impresionantemente pertinente en estos tiempos. Nunca antes en la historia de nuestra profesión ha sido tan importante saber trabajar en una nube, en un sistema, en una plataforma interactiva, integrada, que se actualiza de manera automática y que pone a todo el mundo en la misma sintonía, desarrollando mientras se desarrolla un proyecto de diseño y posteriormente de construcción. El trabajo a distancia hace más sentido que nunca ahora mismo y el trabajo integrado a distancia que nos permiten las plataformas BIM, pues lideran el mercado ahora mismo a nivel global. Tenemos el honor de contar con dos líderes del desarrollo de plataformas BIM, los doctores Heason y Hampton. Ahora mismo se encuentran en una producción constante de investigaciones y de publicaciones que luego les voy a compartir. Y me gustaría leerles un poco su perfil. El doctor David Heason es académico de la Universidad de Wolverhampton, un grado de Ingeniería Civil en la Universidad de Loughborough en Inglaterra. También tiene estudios en CAD y CAD relacionado a construcción de la Universidad de Wolverhampton. Completó PhD en la Universidad de Wolverhampton en 2004, y ahí mismo desarrolló herramientas de software, o sea, él es desarrollador de software del área para permitir la planificación más efectiva en sitios de construcción utilizando BIM de 4D, técnicas de BIM de 4D. Es actualmente Reader in BIM en la Universidad de Wolverhampton y ha pasado 20 años en investigaciones de academia aplicadas a las tecnologías digitales avanzadas para el diseño arquitectónico de construcción. Ha publicado su trabajo en journals internacionales y ha sido charlista en eventos muy importantes del área alrededor del mundo, en Estados Unidos, en China y a través de Europa. Antes de que trabajara como ingeniero de infraestructura enfocado Antes trabajó como ingeniero de infraestructura enfocado en el diseño de esquemas de autopistas utilizando modelado digital 3D y 2D. Y de ahí salió su interés por desarrollar investigaciones de modelado en digital en 3D. David ha sido responsable del desarrollo de proyectos de más de 4 millones de euros en desarrollo y investigación, en R&D. También ha ganado numerosos proyectos de desarrollo e investigación en el Reino Unido, en la organización llamada UK Knowledge Transfer Partnerships, y ahí mismo ha ganado también premiaciones. Estoy leyendo y traduciendo al mismo tiempo, por eso estoy un poco lento. Actualmente David es un líder académico en el área de la construcción de futuro, de Construction Futures Research Center, y ha sido muy importante su trabajo en el desarrollo de Hollow Deck Construction, de la Escuela de Arquitectura y Patrimonio Construido, que provee un rango, una variedad de tecnologías avanzadas que soportan BIM, en proyectos de construcción. Él es co-chair, o sea, es un co-director de departamento de el Foro de futuro, del Desarrollo Futuro de Construcción de Wolverhampton, y co-chair también de la Conferencia Internacional de Construcción de Futuro, ICCF. También es parte del cuerpo académico de la universidad, como les mencioné anteriormente. Él es parte del cuerpo académico que enseña la maestría en BIM en Inglaterra, en la Universidad de Wolverhampton. Y aquí les leo un poco sobre Paul Hampton, que es director de la Escuela de Arquitectura y Patrimonio Construido de Wolverhampton. El señor Hampton es, entre el 2012 y el 2015, fue el primer académico en ser seleccionado por el RICS West Midlands Chairman, y eso fue el miembro más joven del West Midland Chairman of the ICWCI. Paul tiene una práctica vastísima en experiencia y práctica dentro del área del patrimonio construido por más de 30 años, y ha trabajado como anfitrión en proyectos de alto perfil, originalmente trabajando en la ciudad, en el ayuntamiento de la ciudad de Birmingham como arquitecto. Paul también logró varios títulos, tiene varios títulos como técnico arquitectónico, y él se educó también en la Universidad de Wolverhampton, es un egresado, y luego entonces completa su estudio de doctorado en la Universidad de Middlesex University. Is that right? Did I?
Yes, that's perfect.
Okay. No comments. Paul es una persona muy activa en la investigación del área de BIM, y en 2008 se mudó de la industria para volverse un académico, un líder del desarrollo académico en la universidad. Bueno, para nosotros es un gran honor contar con los doctores Heason y Hampton, y bueno, de ahora en adelante le dejo la conducción de la noche a la arquitecta Khaleesi Bachá, de nuevo orgullosamente profesora de UNIBE en el área de BIM y de Integrated Project Delivery, egresada de Wolverhampton de la maestría BIM Integrated Construction. Voy a estar traduciendo paulatinamente el contenido que los doctores Heason y Hampton van a compartirnos el día de hoy. Khaleesi, ¿por qué no nos saludas? David, Paul, hello. We are very, very thankful for your kind participation tonight. We know it's very late in the UK right now. We apologize for that. I hope you guys can hold throughout this very, very meaningful venue tonight. Khaleesi, would you greet us?
Gracias, Jesús. Gracias a todos por acompañarnos. Thank you very much, David and Paul, for being here with us and sharing your knowledge and your time with us. Quiero decirle a los chicos que están conectados, todos nuestros que nos están viendo, pueden hacer sus preguntas por el chat de YouTube o Facebook, y todas esas preguntas las vamos a estar realizando al final. To me, it's a big honor, honestly, to be here and mixing two big academic schools for me, one where I teach and the other one when I was a student and where I was born as a BIM specialist. And as you probably know, this is my passion, so it's very important for me to have these guests. It's a big honor. So David and Paul, we are going to let you start your presentation. If you want to say some words, thank you for being here once again.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to put the presentation up there, David?
I'll put the presentation up and
do some introductions.
Hopefully everybody can see that okay.
Okay, let me have a look. That seems to have gone to the left-hand side for some reason. Let me have a look. Okay, perfect. So a very good evening and a very warm welcome from the University of Wolverhampton and from the UK, from myself and David.
Buenas noches, bienvenidos por parte de mía y de David a esta charla de la Universidad de Wolverhampton.
We feel extremely honoured to be joining you this evening, and can I thank our hosts who have been most kind in inviting us, and we're very much looking forward to sharing our presentation.
Estamos muy honrados de estar aquí en esta noche y agradecemos a nuestros anfitriones y esperamos presentar nuestro contenido de la noche de hoy.
We sort of really excited this week that we have officially opened our new campus in Wolverhampton.
Estamos muy contentos. Esta semana estamos terminando nuestro edificio en el campus en Wolverhampton.
And this is a purpose-built campus called Springfield, which is a merger of heritage and will be a unique school of architecture and built environment, which includes architecture, civil engineers, and built environment professionals working together.
Es un edificio dentro de un campus muy especial para nosotros y el edificio nuevo va a contener una escuela de arquitectura y de ingeniería.
Tonight's presentation is around the near future of BIM for architects, builders and developers.
La presentación de esta noche es para hablar sobre el futuro cercano de BIM relacionado a los intereses de los arquitectos, ingenieros del ambiente construido.
And near the close of the presentation, we will also touch on DIM, which is Demolition Information Modeling.
Y también vamos a tocar el concepto de DIM, que es el modelaje informado de la demolición.
Okay, so thank you from myself and thank you from David. Okay, next slide, David. So, just as an indication as to where Wolverhampton is located.
Para ilustrarles dónde está ubicada Wolverhampton.
We are predominantly in the centre of the UK, known as the West Midlands.
Estamos en el centro de Reino Unido, conocido como West Midlands.
And our closest, largest city, which is the second largest city in the UK, is Birmingham.
Entonces, la segunda ciudad más grande del Reino Unido es Birmingham. Está cerca de Wolverhampton.
For some of you who understand football, you will see on your right-hand side the greatest stadium in the world, which is for Wolverhampton Wanderers Football Club.
Para aquellos amantes del fútbol, este es el mejor estadio del mundo, que es el estadio de Wolverhampton.
And I'm sure everyone agrees they're the greatest team in the world.
Y creo que todo el mundo va a coincidir conmigo que es el mejor estadio del mundo.
Okay, next slide, please. So, the University of Wolverhampton has a huge heritage going back to the 1800s.
La Universidad de Wolverhampton tiene un patrimonio que va que data de los 1800, de los años 1800.
And in its early years as a polytechnic, we used to educate engineers, architecture technicians, and people from engineering backgrounds.
Y desde sus años iniciales como un instituto politécnico educa arquitectos, ingenieros y profesionales del área.
We're also sort of proud to be opened by a member of the royal family.
La universidad fue inaugurada por un miembro de la familia real. Estamos de eso.
And over the last few years, we have celebrated our 21st birthday as a university.
Y en los últimos años hemos celebrado nuestro aniversario número 21 en la universidad.
The pictures relating to the building you can see to the right and the clock tower, that is the new Springfield campus.
Las fotos en las que ven la torre del reloj son las fotos de nuestro nuevo edificio en el campus.
And this is a merger of heritage of an existing brewery site.
Y es una mezcla de patrimonio de una factoría, de una empresa de destilaje de ¿is it beer brewery?
Yes.
Cerveza
Yeah.
antigua.
Yes, it's an 11-acre site.
Es un terreno de 11 acres.
And it was designed with use of modern methods of construction and heritage merging together, and was designed by associated architects with influence from our internal staff.
Fue diseñado con técnicas contemporáneas de construcción y ahí participaron miembros de nuestro staff.
I've been working on it for 5 years with the Vice Chancellor and various parties. David's been very influential, again, and other colleagues in the design. So we're delighted that this week is the week we've opened the building officially, and this is where David, myself are currently working. But any visitors, students that come to the University of Wolverhampton will come to study here.
He estado trabajando ahí en ese proyecto por 5 años y David ha sido muy influyente también en el proceso de desarrollo del proyecto, y los estudiantes que vengan a visitar la universidad van a tener una interacción especial con este edificio.
Next slide, please. Okay, so that's all I'd like to say at the moment from myself, and I'll now hand over to David, and then I'll come back in at the close.
Okay,
Voy a presentar esta información y luego le paso el turno a David.
Okay, so thank you, Paul. And just to reiterate what Paul said, that I'm delighted to be here tonight, and it's fantastic to be able to give this talk to everybody who's joined in.
Me encanta estar aquí esta noche y compartir con todos los que están aquí en línea conectados.
I thought in the first part it would be useful to give a brief overview of the journey for the UK in terms of BIM so far.
Me parece apropiado en la primera parte presentar una panorámica de lo que ha sido BIM en Reino Unido hasta ahora.
So to set some background as to the UK construction sector, it's a very big sector for the UK. It represents around 7 to 8% of our gross domestic product.
El sector de la construcción en Reino Unido representa un 7% del Producto Interno Bruto de Reino Unido, y eso representa aproximadamente 110 billones de euros por año de gasto.
We have
De liras, correcto.
So within the UK, our government has set us some very challenging targets, which you can see there, around reducing cost and making everything more efficient.
El gobierno de Reino Unido se ha propuesto metas muy desafiantes, como la de reducción del gasto público, por ejemplo, y proyectos más eficientes.
And that is really where BIM starts, because we see BIM as being the vehicle to make these changes to our industry.
Y ahí es que BIM realmente se luce. Vemos que BIM es una herramienta esencial para lograr estas metas de ser más eficientes y de trabajar más económicamente.
Within the UK, we also have had a recent report by a guy called Mark Farmer.
I didn't get the last part.
So the recent report is by he's a government commission report.
Sí. Esta persona hizo un reporte últimamente sobre el estado de BIM.
And essentially this tells us that as an industry we are too slow to adopt.
Como industria somos muy lentos para adaptarnos.
Based on all of that, our BIM journey really began in the UK in 2011.
Basados en todo esto, nuestro recorrido, nuestra experiencia con BIM realmente inició en 2011. 2011, you said?
Yes, 2011.
Okay.
So, and the government at that time,
el gobierno en ese entonces,
told the UK industry,
le dijo a la industria,
that it had to use BIM on all government projects,
que tenía que usar BIM en todos los proyectos del gobierno,
by 2016.
Para 2016.
Now that, in 2011, in the UK, most people didn't understand what BIM was.
En 2011, en Reino Unido, la mayoría de las personas no entendían qué significaba BIM.
And so, for the first few years, it was crazy panic, because people trying to understand what this actually meant to them.
Así que por los próximos primeros años, la gente entraba en pánico porque no estaba familiarizada con esto.
Now, from that point, we spent 10 years, nearly 10 years, developing what we call the pillars of BIM.
Desde ahí nos pasamos 10 años desarrollando aquello que llamamos los pilares de BIM.
And you can see them here, and they relate to a range of standards that we've developed in the UK.
Lo pueden ver aquí, y desarrollamos una serie de estándares en Reino Unido.
And just to give you an idea, I'll run through very briefly what each of those standards talks about.
Para darles una idea, mencionaré muy brevemente de qué se trata cada uno de esos estándares.
So we have one standard which controls how we use BIM for the design and construction phase of a project.
Tenemos un estándar que controla cómo BIM es utilizado para proyectos de construcción.
And once the construction is finished,
y una vez que se termine la construcción,
then we have another standard which controls how we use the digital data for the asset management side of things.
Tenemos otro estándar que controla cómo utilizamos la data digital.
Now, we also in the UK have adopted COBie.
Aquí también en Reino Unido hemos adoptado, you mean COBie?
COBie, sí, yes, COBie.
COBie, okay. Hemos adoptado COBie. What is it about?
So COBie is a US standard.
Es un estándar americano. Okay.
Which is all about sort of creating a digital data set of the building and all the assets within the building.
Que crea un set de data digital sobre el edificio.
Essentially, it's a spreadsheet.
Es una hoja de cálculo, parecida a una hoja de Excel.
And because now, and in the introduction, you mentioned about cloud-based and collaboration and sharing of data.
Sí, porque al principio mencioné la influencia de las nubes y de la colaboración para compartir información.
We've in the UK, we've recognized issues around cybersecurity and keeping our data secure. And so we've created a standard to help us make sure BIM data is secure.
En Reino Unido también nos hemos preocupado por la ciberseguridad y asegurarnos de que la data está asegurada cuando se comparte.
Within the construction sector, also health and safety is a really big issue in the UK.
En los lugares de construcción, la salud y la seguridad son un gran tema en Reino Unido.
And so we also had a standard 2 years ago, which helps us to understand how we can use BIM and the digital data to support health and safety.
Tenemos un estándar aquí en Reino Unido que nos ayuda en el que utilizamos BIM para mejorar los estándares de seguridad y de salud de las personas.
So the British are very good at creating standards, and we like to have standards to work through.
Los británicos somos muy buenos creando estándares, nos gusta formar estándares para desarrollar cosas.
And so hopefully you can see from that in the last 10 years, we've not only developed our digital capability, but also we've tried to manage how we implement BIM.
Así que en los últimos 10 años no solamente hemos desarrollado nuestra capacidad de generación digital, sino también de cómo manejar BIM, cómo gerenciar BIM.
Now, it's taken us 10 years to get to that point.
Nos ha tomado 10 años llegar allí.
And then everything changed again.
Y luego todo cambió de nuevo.
And we now have the international standards, the ISO standards for BIM.
Ahora tenemos los estándares internacionales, estándares ISO for BIM, para BIM.
The good thing for us is a lot of those standards are actually built on the work that was done in the UK.
Didn't get the last part.
So a lot of those new standards are built on the UK standards.
Muchos de esos estándares internacionales salen de estándares de Reino Unido.
And this is just some examples of how things have changed from the UK standard to the international standard, and you can see similarities between the two.
Y estos son ejemplos de cómo las cosas han cambiado desde los estándares internacionales han sido influenciados por estándares de Reino Unido y cómo se ve esta relación.
Okay, so hopefully that's a very brief overview of where the UK has come from in the last 10 years.
Esta es una vista muy breve, muy resumida de cómo ha venido el Reino Unido lidiando con estos estándares en los últimos años.
And I've tried to condense into 10 minutes what Khaleesi spent 1 year learning.
Traté de condensar todo esto en una presentación de 10 minutos. So,
we're also now looking forward, and we're looking at how the future of BIM workflows may work in the UK.
Y estamos trabajando en cómo se ve el flujo de trabajo de BIM en el futuro cercano para Reino Unido ahora.
And we are now starting to see more and more interest in the digital twin.
Estamos viendo que hay cada vez más interés en algo que se llama Digital Twin.
and I'm not sure if that's something that has been talked about a lot in the DR yet.
No estoy seguro de que ha sido algo de lo que se ha conversado mucho todavía en República Dominicana.
But it's becoming a global phenomenon.
Se está volviendo un fenómeno global.
So, from our perspective at the moment, we see a very linear construction process from design through to demolition.
Existe un proceso muy lineal desde el diseño hasta la demolición de un proyecto.
And BIM now has a part to play in every section of that life cycle.
Y BIM juega un rol ahora en cada parte de ese ciclo de vida.
And the examples on the slide are how we have used BIM and digital twin they are some of our university buildings that you can see on the slide.
Y un ejemplo de aquí en el slide de cómo utilizamos el concepto de digital twin en el proceso de desarrollo del proyecto aquí en este slide, del proyecto de la universidad.
Now, within the UK, we are becoming more interested in off-site construction.
En Reino Unido estamos cada vez más interesados en la construcción off-site. What is off-site construction?
So, off-site construction is where it's factory-based construction.
Construcción basada en factoría.
Yeah.
You mean manufacture of buildings?
Yeah, so manufactured construction.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and that now is changing slightly how we implement BIM.
Está cambiando esto gradualmente cómo implementamos BIM.
So part of the research that I'm engaged in at the moment is looking at how we can link the factory and the manufacturing process with the BIM process.
Parte de la investigación que estoy llevando a cabo ahora es viendo cómo conectamos la construcción de factorías y la plataforma BIM. You mean how we connect the offsite construction with BIM technologies, right?
Yeah, and also the factory. So we're connecting the building site, the factory, and the BIM technologies all together.
Conectamos el sitio de construcción, la factoría y la tecnología, todo junto.
And we're doing that. Let me jump onto this one. We're doing that with something called Discrete Event Simulation.
Y hacemos esto con algo llamado simulación discreta de evento.
And that allows us to simulate the factory.
Y nos permite simular, modelar la factoría.
In a very similar way to how we use 4D to simulate the construction site.
Una forma muy similar a como utilizamos tecnología 4D en lugares de construcción.
So that now means that we can simulate all of those things together, so we can see what the factory is manufacturing and how that is impacting on the construction site.
Y ahora podemos simular todas estas cosas juntas para ver cómo la compañía está, cómo la factoría está produciendo o manufacturando y cómo esto se relaciona con el sitio de construcción.
And we've started to do some work with this, and that's allowed us to see where the issues are between the factory and construction and where delays might occur.
Comenzamos a ver, a analizar todo esto y viendo dónde están ocurriendo las demoras.
So this is some new research. We're still finding out new applications for this in the UK.
Esta es una investigación nueva y todavía estamos identificando posibles aplicaciones aquí en Reino Unido.
And then building on from that, we are now doing a lot of our work in terms of the digital twin.
Y trabajando sobre esa base estamos haciendo mucho trabajo, desarrollando mucho trabajo alrededor del concepto de digital twin, de el gemelo digital.
And we're particularly interested in taking that sensor data and taking live information and feeding that back into our workflows.
Estamos queriendo capturar ese sentido de la data, información en vivo dentro del proceso de trabajo.
Now, what we find in the UK is that there is a lack of understanding of what is really meant by digital twin.
Lo que pasa en Reino Unido es que hay muy poca comprensión sobre lo que significa un gemelo digital, un digital twin.
So we have now set up in the UK a new report and a new centre, which is looking at what we call a national digital twin.
Hemos desarrollado aquí en Reino Unido un nuevo reporte, un nuevo sensor para generar lo que llamamos un gemelo digital nacional.
And we're hoping that that will sit with our BIM standards and it will help us to better integrate all of those technologies together.
Que nos va a ayudar a integrar mejor todas estas tecnologías juntas.
And so we see that now as feeding back. So we're able now to use that digital twin data and all that digital data to keep giving information back from construction right back to design.
Estamos ahora en capacidad de acumular toda esta información digital para utilizarla de nuevo en los sitios de construcción.
And we're now looking at a complete construction project which uses digital data all the way through, including things like laser scanning data and RFID.
Estamos identificando, haciendo proyectos de construcción que utilizan data desde el principio hasta el fin, incluyendo levantamientos por láser.
And one thing that we're starting to become more interested in is how we can use BIM at the demolition stage.
Y una de las cosas que más nos interesa es cómo podemos utilizar BIM en la etapa de demolición del edificio. That's very interesting.
Yeah, so the UK has a large amount of unused sites, what we call brownfield sites.
En Reino Unido hay una gran cantidad de edificios que ya no se están utilizando. Nosotros lo llamamos campos marrones.
And we're a small island, really.
Y somos una pequeña isla.
So we can't afford to have unused land.
No podemos costearnos el tener tierra no utilizada.
And so we need to look at how to efficiently demolish so that we can rebuild.
Y tenemos que ver cómo demoler eficientemente para poder reconstruir.
So I'll let Paul just take over for a few minutes now to talk about demolition information modeling and how we see that progressing.
Okay,
David que intervenga ahora para hablarnos un poco sobre el tema de la demolición.
Thank you, David. So one of the issues we have experienced at the university was whilst we had architecture, civil engineering, building surveying, quantity surveying and various other disciplines.
Una de las situaciones que hemos experimentado en este proceso ha sido, you mean the issue has been of people from different disciplines working on the project?
Yes. So what has been missing has been the demolition sector.
¿Qué ha faltado dentro del sector de la demolición?
So we have been working on European projects called Cradle to Cradle.
Hemos estado trabajando en proyectos europeos llamados de cuna a cuna.
And it uses circular economy of repurposing materials.
Y utiliza el concepto de la economía circular para reciclar materiales.
So if we use those principles,
si usamos estos principios,
when we have a building which has been designed with digital twin data and information, live information, and various technologies.
Cuando tenemos un edificio diseñado utilizando el concepto de el gemelo digital y otras tecnologías,
when we come to looking at deconstructing, not demolition, deconstructing the building,
podemos pensar en deconstruir el edificio y no demolerlo. No es el concepto de demolición, sino de deconstrucción, desensamblado del edificio.
we can work out prior to the demolition
Podemos trabajar antes de la demolición
by using DIM, so demolition information modeling, so bringing BIM modeling into a demolition model,
utilizando el concepto de DIM, modelaje con información para demolición,
to work out the best methodology for demolition,
para trabajar en la mejor metodología posible de demolición,
and also how the materials that are located in the model, i.e. the building,
como los materiales que están ya modelados digitalmente del edificio
can then be repurposed back in a future building.
se pueden reutilizar de nuevo en un futuro edificio.
So we are the only university in the world with a master's in demolition management.
Así que somos la única universidad en el mundo con una maestría en gestión, en gerencia de la demolición.
And we are currently working with both presidents of professional bodies, predominantly the Institute of Demolition Engineers.
Estamos trabajando con los dos líderes de los organismos profesionales de... I'm sorry, what was the name again of the organization?
IDE, so it's Institute of Demolition Engineers.
Del Instituto de Ingenieros de Demolición.
And why we are working closely with this professional body
Y mientras trabajamos de cerca con estos gremios profesionales,
is because they have some of the best experts in the world.
Ellos son los mejores expertos en el mundo,
but they have never brought their information together in one place.
pero nunca han reunido toda su información junta en un solo lugar.
So with our combined knowledge and experience, mine, David's and various professionals in Wolverhampton and the sector,
Así que con toda esa combinación de conocimiento y experiencia de la mía, dice Paul, la de David y de todos los miembros del sector,
we can use digital twinning and fourth industrial revolution technology
podemos utilizar el concepto del gemelo digital y tecnologías de la cuarta revolución industrial
to support redevelopment of cities and urban development.
para apoyar el redesarrollo de las ciudades y del desarrollo urbano.
Using repurposed materials so there is lower cost and we are using local materials and local craftsmen.
Utilizando materiales reciclados, bajando los costos, utilizando también mano de obra local, cercana.
Importantly, by bringing BIM into DIM,
así que transformando tecnología BIM en tecnología DIM,
this will also educate and support young architects and new practitioners to better understand how buildings are put together.
Esto va a educar a nuevos arquitectos y practicantes en la concepción de cómo los edificios son concebidos.
But also then when they come to be deconstructed, how they could be better designed for deconstruction.
Y cómo estos edificios pueden ser diseñados de una mejor manera pensando en su deconstrucción.
Okay. Next slide. Is that back to you, David?
Back to me. So we also are doing some work on what we call translocating buildings.
Hemos estado haciendo también mucho trabajo en lo que llamamos edificios transubicados.
and we're looking at how we can use BIM to translocate some of our historic buildings.
Estamos viendo cómo utilizar BIM para desplazar, para cambiar de ubicación algunos de nuestros edificios históricos.
And in particular, we are working with some very big museums in the UK.
Particularmente estamos trabajando con museos muy grandes de Reino Unido.
And some of the work that we have done has been with one of your ex-alumni, or one of our alumni.
Parte del trabajo que hemos estado haciendo, en parte de este trabajo he estado trabajando también uno de sus egresados.
Which was some fantastic work that's recently been published in a leading journal.
Él hizo un trabajo fantástico que ha sido recientemente publicado en uno de nuestras publicaciones académicas.
But the cool thing about this is we've used old buildings, new technology, and deconstruction.
Lo interesante de esto es que utilizamos edificios viejos, tecnologías nuevas y deconstrucción.
So that the whole thing of merging heritage and history with new technology has been something quite different.
Así que todo esto de combinar edificios patrimoniales y nuevas tecnologías ha sido interesante.
So I wanted now that we've talked about the process, I wanted to look a bit more at some of the technologies that we're using.
Ahora que ya hablamos del proceso, quisiera hablar también de algunas de las tecnologías que estamos utilizando.
And in particular, we created something that we call C2AV.
En particular, creamos algo que se llama C2AV.
And this allows us to categorize where the technology sits within the BIM process.
Y nos permite categorizar dónde se encuentra la tecnología en el proceso BIM.
So if we look first at the capture.
Así que si vemos primero está el proceso de captura, you mean data capture, right?
Data capture, yes.
De captura de data.
And we're using technology that maybe people who are on the call are already aware of.
Estamos utilizando tecnologías que ya muchas personas conocen, probablemente.
But a project that we've done recently with a big construction company in the UK.
Y este proyecto que recientemente he estado trabajando una gran firma de construcción en Reino Unido.
Is we've captured the digital data at every stage of the construction process.
Colectamos información digital en todo el proceso de construcción del proyecto.
And that's allowed us to validate the BIM data against the construction data.
Esto nos permitió validar, confirmar la data de BIM en comparación con la data de la construcción.
But it also means that we have all of that data for the management of the building.
Y también significa que tenemos toda esta información, toda esta data para la gestión, la gerencia del edificio.
So in total, I think for that building, we've captured a few terabytes of data.
Así que en total creo que para ese edificio colectamos algunos terabytes de data.
So we are looking more at how we can use advanced tools for the creation of construction information too.
Así que estamos también viendo cómo podemos crear más herramientas de construcción también y de diseño.
And we are now engaged in generative design research.
Estamos ahora mismo involucrados en la investigación de diseño generativo.
And in particular, we are looking at Grasshopper and Dynamo.
Y en particular estamos trabajando con Grasshopper y con Dynamo.
And we are linking that back to some of the factory work we mentioned earlier.
Y estamos conectando esto con parte del trabajo en las factorías que les mencioné.
And we're also linking that to create better layouts of the construction site during the construction process.
Estamos conectando todo esto con la creación de mejores diseños de ejecución de proyectos de construcción en el site, en el terreno.
And our future work now is starting to look at 3D printing.
Y nuestro trabajo futuro está cada vez más orientado a la impresión digital.
But 3D printing on a big scale.
La impresión digital a gran escala.
From an analysis point of view,
desde un punto de vista del análisis analítico,
much of our research at the moment is looking at the use of 4D simulation on construction sites.
Mucho de nuestro trabajo al momento se basa en simulaciones 4D en el sitio de construcción.
And we are also working on some new tools to bring in pedestrian and human movement.
Estamos también trabajando en nuevas herramientas para impactar positivamente a los peatones y el movimiento humano.
And this is what you can see in this image at the bottom here is human movement.
Y es lo que se puede ver aquí en esta imagen al fondo a la izquierda sobre desplazamiento humano, movimiento humano.
And that now has become a really important thing because we have in the UK social distancing.
Y ahora esto se ha vuelto una herramienta muy importante porque ahora tenemos en Reino Unido el distanciamiento social.
Which on very congested and constrained construction sites is really challenging.
Que es todo un desafío para sitios de construcción que están muy congestionados de personas trabajando.
So our research now is looking at taking our 4D model and bringing in human movement to analyze the safety of the construction site because of COVID.
Nuestra investigación ahora es combinar los modelos de 4D con la interacción humana, con el análisis de los movimientos humanos para prevenir los contagios por COVID.
And hopefully this research won't be needed for much more longer.
Y esperamos que esta investigación no sea necesaria mucho más tiempo.
And I'm sure that's the same for you guys over there.
Y espero también eso para ustedes allá.
So one big area that we are working into is the visualization of data.
Y una gran área en la que estamos trabajando también es la visualización de la data.
And we have been working in the area of virtual reality for construction for around 20 years.
Hemos estado trabajando. Algunas personas pueden recordar este tipo de horrible dispositivo de realidad virtual.
So we're now sort of evolved, and we've seen things change. So we've seen virtual reality become cool and then uncool.
Vemos que los elementos, dispositivos de realidad virtual a veces se hacen más interesantes, más cool y a veces menos cool.
And it's cool again, which is great for us because that links in with the whole BIM way of working.
Y ahora de nuevo se han vuelto cool, así que trabajamos.
So one of the things that's happened, we think, as well, is that's the cost of all the virtual reality technology has decreased.
Algo que hemos estado identificando es que el costo de la realidad virtual ha bajado.
And the ease of use has increased. It's become easier.
Y la facilidad del uso ha incrementado.
And that has tied in with the UK in particular. That's tied in with our increased use of BIM.
Esto se ha vinculado con nuestro uso incrementado de BIM.
So now the UK sector, and I think the construction industry globally, is now a digital industry.
Y ahora la industria de la construcción a nivel global se ha vuelto una industria digital.
And hopefully that makes it much more interesting for young people to want to get involved in the industry.
Y creo que eso lo hace más interesante para que las personas jóvenes se involucren en la industria.
So at the University of Wolverhampton, we've had a 20-year journey of implementing sort of 3D for construction.
En la Universidad de Wolverhampton tenemos un trabajo ya de 20 años en esta área.
We built one of the first virtual reality centers for architecture in the UK.
Construimos uno de los primeros centros de realidad virtual para arquitectura en el Reino Unido,
which cost a terrible amount of money, around about £500,000.
que costó una cantidad enorme de dinero, alrededor de what's the amount again? I'm sorry.
£500,000.
$500,000
And that was back in 2001.
Y eso fue en 2001.
And now we can buy headsets from the hardware or from the electric store for £300.
Y ahora podemos comprar estos equipos para la cabeza por 300 libras en una tienda.
Now we're really excited at the moment because in our new building we have constructed something called the construction holodeck.
Estamos muy emocionados al momento porque en nuestro nuevo edificio tenemos un área llamada área en vacío de deconstrucción.
And if anybody is a Star Trek fan, which I am, then they'll know where that come from.
Y si tenemos aquí fans de Star Trek, se van a dar cuenta de dónde viene el término. You mean deconstruction holodeck, right?
So the construction holodeck. Yeah.
Oh.
Now this is we've built this. We now have virtual reality treadmills.
Estos son espacios para la realidad virtual.
And we have a room that can be mapped to any virtual reality environment.
Tenemos un cuarto que se puede transformar en cualquier ambiente de realidad virtual.
So if anybody has seen the movie Ready Player One, that's what we've created.
Si alguien ha visto la película, you said Ready Player One?
Yeah, it's a Hollywood movie, Ready Player One.
Okay, la película Ready Player One se va a dar cuenta de a qué me refiero.
But we're using it for our architects, for our civil engineers, so they can do all of their work and their design work in a completely virtual environment.
Estamos haciendo esto para que nuestros ingenieros y arquitectos hagan todo su trabajo de diseño en un ambiente totalmente virtual.
So hopefully when we get back into our campus after COVID, we could do some videos and send them over and show you how the whole thing works.
Y espero que cuando podamos volver de nuevo al campus podamos hacer algunos videos para enviárselos a ustedes y que vean todo esto. I hope so.
I hope so. Me too.
Yeah.
So I wanted to just finish off by thinking a little bit around the future and where some of our thoughts are going in terms of the future and where we think may happen.
Quiero terminar pensando un poco en el futuro de todo esto.
And this graph was taken from somewhere else, but I've adjusted it slightly, and it shows you how people's perception of technology has changed over time.
Este gráfico lo tomé de algún otro lado y ilustra un poco cómo la percepción de la gente sobre la tecnología ha cambiado con el tiempo.
And I think as bad as COVID is for all of us, that I think that COVID can become a singularity point that drives a vast amount of change for our industry.
Y creo que lo que ha pasado con el COVID tiene el potencial de provocar un cambio enorme en la industria.
So we have all become now comfortable with distributed working.
Todos hemos comenzado a sentirnos cómodos con el trabajo participativo, distributivo, integrado.
So who knows that maybe now I don't need to go to a construction site to have a visit, I just send a drone.
Así que quién sabe si ahora mismo ya yo no necesito ir a un lugar de construcción para hacer una supervisión, yo pudiera fácilmente enviar un dron.
So I no longer have to leave my house.
To read your what?
So I no longer have to leave my house to do site visits.
Okay, ya no tengo que salir de mi casa para hacer visitas de campo.
We also now have we don't need to be in the same office. So we have BIM tools such as these on the screen, which allow us to design collaboratively.
Ya no tenemos que estar todos en la misma mesa. Tenemos estas herramientas BIM de realidad virtual que nos permite trabajar de forma colaborativa.
And because of COVID, we're all more comfortable in doing that.
Y ahora con el COVID todavía nos sentimos más cómodos haciendo esto.
And if we go one stage further from that, we then talk about something called Holoportation.
Y todavía tenemos otra herramienta llamada Holoportation.
So this is research at the moment in Microsoft labs.
Esto se está investigando justo ahora en laboratorios de Microsoft.
But it's the combination of augmented reality and
Combinación de realidad aumentada.
so we could all be in the same room, but we could be there in 3D.
Podemos estar todos en el mismo cuarto, pero estamos ahí en 3D.
And anybody who's interested in that, search for Holoportation and look at some of the things that are going on. Really interesting.
Y cualquiera que se interese en esto, busque Holoportation para que se dé cuenta de que todo esto es muy interesante.
And finally, we can't ignore artificial intelligence.
Y finalmente no podemos ignorar la inteligencia artificial.
And I'm equally excited and scared by artificial intelligence.
Estoy asustado y emocionado al mismo tiempo por la inteligencia artificial.
The technical part of me is really excited because of the opportunities for the construction sector around design and construction.
El técnico en mí está súper emocionado por todo lo que esto impacta positivamente al sector, a la industria de la construcción.
So the ability for BIM tools to optimize designs and redesign work for us is really exciting.
La habilidad que tiene todo esto de potenciar los procesos de diseño es sumamente excitante, emocionante.
The scary thing is they become too intelligent and we no longer have a job.
Lo intimidante de todo esto es que se vuelven muy inteligentes y luego entonces nos reemplazan a nosotros y nos quedamos sin trabajo.
But I don't think we're near there yet.
Pero todavía no creo que estamos cerca de ahí aún.
But it's there's a vast amount of opportunity in terms of machine learning to analyze and help us manage construction sites.
Hay una gran cantidad de oportunidades en términos de aprendizaje de las máquinas aplicado a todo este proceso, a toda esta industria.
So on that note of hopefully not making us too scared about AI, I think we'll wrap that up. Paul just wants to come in on a couple of things there.
Espero que no nos asuste mucho la inteligencia artificial y Paul tiene algo que decir ahora. Paul? Your microphone is...
Thank you. Sorry. So thanks, David. Thanks, everyone. What David's just picked up around that sort of where we are developing and where we may go to is vitally important. So at the moment in the UK, we're having a nuclear plant that is built, and they're having to build that with two separate BIM models. So the client has one BIM model and the contractor has a separate BIM model, and they still haven't managed to resolve the issue of security, and there is still issues like interoperability. However, as David points out, so I think there are security issues and there are various challenges which is noted by governments around sort of people hacking into models and into intelligence. So there's a big push on security around all of these things. And iCloud sounds very exciting. Sorry, I should have said that in sentences. Sorry, do you want to summarize that? Sorry.
Existen muchas preocupaciones por la seguridad de la data. Los clientes tienen un modelo, los constructores tienen un modelo de trabajo. y esto es parte de una situación actual. I'm sorry, I couldn't capture everything you said.
That's fine. So basically, the security concerns as well as intelligence challenges.
Hay desafíos que tienen que ver con inteligencia y otros que tienen que ver con seguridad.
So if you think of devices that we have in our homes, such as Alexa and various Google devices,
si piensan en dispositivos que tenemos en casa, tales como Alexa y dispositivos de Google,
the question is being asked, if we put this intelligence into buildings,
la pregunta es si ponemos esta inteligencia en edificios,
who can hear and see that information and how will they use that?
Que pueden escuchar y ver esta información, cómo van a utilizar toda esta información.
And the final thing before I touch on professional bodies,
y lo último antes de cambiar hacia la cuestión de organizaciones profesionales,
is if I could make reference to this piece of skin between your thumb and this finger,
que si pudiera hacer una referencia a esta parte de la piel entre el dedo, entre un dedo y el otro.
There is a lot of work now of putting microchips into that piece of skin there.
Hay mucho trabajo ahora mismo orientado a la implantación de chips bien pequeñitos en la piel.
All of which can monitor your blood pressure, your heart rate.
Que pueden monitorear tu presión arterial y tus latidos del corazón.
But of course, it can also identify your location and when you're in a building and when you're not in a building.
Y te pueden identificar también tu ubicación exacta y cuándo estás dentro del edificio y cuándo no estás dentro del edificio.
And the final piece of work that we are doing, which I would not normally talk about,
y lo último en lo que estamos trabajando, de lo que normalmente no hablaría,
is a piece of work to potentially print a house on the moon.
Es trabajo sobre cómo potencialmente imprimir toda una casa en la luna. That's amazing.
Yes, but I can't say any more at this stage, but I will feedback in the future.
Okay, looking forward.
It will happen. It will happen. So finally, very finally, we are very much associated with professional bodies.
Finalmente estamos muy vinculados a gremios profesionales.
Everyone attending this event tonight can use this event as continual professional development.
Todo el mundo que está asistiendo a este evento esta noche puede utilizar este evento como parte de su desarrollo profesional.
And if anyone is interested in more information or joining one of those professional bodies,
si alguno está interesado en más información o en unirse a uno de estos gremios profesionales,
please contact myself or David will facilitate that opportunity.
Por favor, contácteme a mí o a David para esta oportunidad. Would you be kind to share your email address, perhaps?
I've put it in the chat room here, but yes, I'll type it again. Yeah.
I've just put in my email address to them there.
Thank you.
El email del doctor David Heason es d.heason@wlv.ac.uk d.heason@wlv.ac.uk. El email del doctor Paul Hampton es lo repito, p.hampton@wlv.ac.uk p.hampton@wlv.ac.uk. Pueden a la Escuela de Arquitectura de UNIBE y allá también les reiteramos esta información en caso de que no tengan algún error. Okay.
Can we just close then by obviously thanking you for translating?
Well, it has been my very great pleasure. I'm so sorry I haven't been able to catch up with everything you have expressed tonight, but I hope many people here speak English and will realize and understand the full extent of what you have been talking about. But I would love to have Khaleesi's remarks on what we have been learning tonight. Khaleesi?
Yeah. We have a couple questions and messages from the audience. I'm going to read them now. We have first Sir Paul Bowden. He says, "Good morning and good luck to my colleagues from the University of Wolverhampton." And we also have Candy Peralta, one of my daughters, my BIM daughters, one of my students. She says, "The background of the history about the building that you showed is very interesting, lovely and awesome." And we also have a message from our colleague teacher, Magali Cava. "Excellent presentation. Many thanks to Hampton and Keesum." She is also a teacher in our architecture school.
Right.
We have some other interesting comments about prefabrication, what you showed, David.
Yep.
Thanks of everything, and it's one of my comments. I'm going to do that now. I want to thank you again for these amazing updates on the BIM life and world. So one of the things that I like about this presentation, or one of the things that caught my attention, is that you never stop evolving. You always look, what are you doing? What can we do with what we already have? As you said, you have been developing for 10 years all the standards, and then now you have to evolve to something new and something that can be exported to the rest of the world. So we really thank you for that.
The interesting thing with this is this: because of how BIM is, it will never stand still.
Yes.
So as we think we get to a point where we've created a workflow, or we've created standards, the technology will evolve.
Yeah.
And as the technology evolves, so we'll have to find new ways of working with it.
Yeah.
So we'll never stand still.
I also want to point out the importance of the academia, of the university works, not just University of Wolverhampton, but all of universities around the world, and in the UK, here in the art, we have to take more seriously the importance that we have in terms of doing research, in terms of experimenting, which is extremely important, in terms of coming up with new things, new technologies, mixing up things one with the other. Like, what can we get out of this without the fear of failing, without the fear of the risks that real projects may be involving? So I think that's really important that we, and Jesus, we take that into consideration and into insight, as well as any other teachers from other universities that can be watching this talk today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely.
And sorry, I interrupted you, David.
No, I think in terms of this, of everything around this around BIM, I think the universities always have a key role to play, always.
Yeah.
In this, it is really, really important that I think we almost got to the point here in the UK where, and some people would argue against this, but I think we got to the point where industry was getting slightly ahead of universities, because industry was pushing on and the universities were a little bit behind. I think that's changed again now. I think universities are ahead, and I think we're thinking outside of the box a little bit more. And that needs to happen, because if that doesn't happen, the whole thing just stays constant and we don't push forward. So sometimes we have to think of crazy things.
Yeah.
Sometimes we have to come up with crazy ideas. And I always used to say to you when you're in my class, like, if somebody tells you it's a crazy idea, in 10 years' time, they'll come and ask you for that, because that crazy idea will be reality.
Yeah.
So don't ever be afraid to do something that you think is, or if somebody tells you that will never happen, it will happen.
We have to take the university as a playground, like an experimental playground.
I agree.
With the freedom to do so. I have another question for you guys. It's something that I think is happening both in UK, it's happening here. We have been promoting groups, and we have, trying our best to spread the word, but we still have a low female participation in the field. Do you have any suggestions to make girls and women participate more in this male-dominated field?
I'm sure Paul will pick up on this as well, but it is a challenge, and I think one of the things that's held things back in the UK has been the perception of the construction sector. So when people think of construction in the UK, they think of muddy boots, of dirty construction sites, of all these things. Actually, we're trying to do at the moment is get the message out that construction is a high-tech industry. And one of the things I do when I talk to kids, so you have to talk to school kids, you have to get them interested at that age. Is the technology that we use is the same technology that people use to create the video games that you're playing on, and you see that kind of something that they go, oh, no, I didn't think construction did that. So as an example, right, my daughter's nearly 13 years old, and she spends so much time playing Minecraft. It's crazy. But when I talk to her and I analyze what she's doing, she's in Minecraft, she's working in 3D, she's building towns in 3D. But on a headset, she's talking to her friends, and they're building the same town. They're collaborating and building the same town. Yeah. Right. So I use this as an example to students. Is that's BIM, right? You're designing, you're constructing collaboratively, working in a shared workspace, working in a virtual, in a cloud-based shared workspace, and you're working in 3D. You're following the BIM process. It's just that you don't know you're doing it. And that is what, and if you can explain that and say, look, if you worked in construction, that's what you'd be doing, but you'd be doing it with even cooler technology. That gets them excited. And I think that's one route, is to try to change this perception of construction. Yes, there is elements of construction which is site-based, but actually construction is a high-tech industry. And if we can change the perception, it's not only females, it's everybody. We need more people in the industry. But certainly that's, I see that as a vehicle. I'm sure Paul's got some other thoughts on that.
Yeah, I have to say I sort of like to feel I'm an ambassador for women in property and construction, and I very much support obviously inclusivity across all the piece, but particularly the recognition that younger people now, their sort of use of technology and movement is different to what mine is, and I think they will push the boundaries. I very often explain about my mobile phone, which probably was the size of this bottle when we started, and how we've moved to sort of this technology, and how we've pushed the boundaries. But I think for sure women have a magnificent role to play in our sector, and as David's just described, and it's not a sexist comment, but girls, women, females, they can think about lots of things at many times. So that interactive approach is exactly what's required for this digital sort of movement. Over and above that, I'm doing a piece of work with inspirational women around the world who are willing to act as a mentor for women across the world to help inspire them to move forward. So again, if there are volunteers within your university who you feel would benefit from that, please let me know. So as an example, on Monday, we had Louise Brooke-Smith, who was the first female president of the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors. So it took 143 years, but she was the first female president of RICS. And it is great, and it just shows that barriers can be pushed, and it's about working inclusively and getting young minds inspired. It's about changing the perception that this sector is a cool sector. It's always been promoted as something that is bricks, mortars, a very dirty sector, something you just wouldn't want to be involved with. And now the perception is starting to move, but it not only needs support from our side, it needs the schools and the girls of the future to come forward and embrace this, like you have. And if I use you, Kilisi, as an example, you've sort of come over to another country, you've sort of picked up that skill set, and now, if you like, you're an ambassador for people in your part of the world. So without a doubt, I will be back in touch with you on a different matter to sort of, for you to inspire the next generation. And, you know, I've got twin girls, and their generation just never wanted to know about sort of what Dad did or what David did. But this new generation, I think, as long as we can make the connections, but it needs to take place in the schools. So we're spending a lot of time with school teachers because they are the influencers. So we've all heard about YouTube influencers and whatever else, but these are the influencers on a daily basis that can showcase what those opportunities are in our sector. The problem comes is they don't know themselves. So we've got to extract them out of the school classroom into the sector, or into Springfield, or into everywhere where this technology is being used, or we need to go into their schools and share that. But we've got to inspire those next generation of teachers who can then re-inspire as influencers to pick up on people that have got talents and say, you know what, that's going to be a great talent. Because when I went to a school for careers advice, everyone was going to be an archaeologist. It sort of seemed to go in a computer. Yeah, you're going to be an archaeologist. Yeah, you're going to be an So you know, we need to push boundaries, but it needs a sort of a push and a movement. We've got to keep pushing those boundaries, like we have with technology here. And it does need, I'm afraid to say, it needs ambassadors like yourself to play your part in that role.
Yeah, we're working on that, yes. Thank you, Paul.
You're welcome.
Well, Doctors Heason and Hampton, we are again very, very honored to have you here tonight. And I guess it's very, very light in the morning. We're early in the morning and late in the night. Yeah. You guys in the UK, and I'm so sorry about your sleeping time tonight.
Don't worry about that. That's been great.
But I hope you guys can come over sometime soon and sip some great Dominican coffee, have a great time with us here as soon as it's possible, to continue this discussion in a more personal way. And we are looking forward to create other spaces, other models to interact together. And we're working on that, as you know. I hope we can soon announce a couple of initiatives, joint initiatives. And again, thank you all. Thank you, Kalesi. You've been great. Your insight, your observations have been of great compliment this whole discussion. So I think we can call it a night for today. We can call it a day.
Okay, thank you. Thanks very much indeed. Thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you very much.
Have a great night, everybody. Gracias a todos. Se me olvidó el español.
Can you just explain for everyone, stay safe, keep well, and just sort of, you know, follow whatever you need to do. Just we all need to meet up again, basically, and we need to follow that guidance, whatever that guidance is.
Claro, que se mantenga a salvo a todos. Salud para todos. Buenas noches. Gracias por estar con nosotros. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Okay. Bye bye. Bye David. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye Paul. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Mhm.